California's Communities is supported by the California Redevelopment Association Foundation, a statewide organization made up of cities, counties, nonprofits, and private businesses sharing a common goal of bringing renewed life to neighborhoods and downtowns by expanding local businesses, creating jobs, building affordable housing, restoring buildings, and improving public facilities and infrastructure. Redevelopment, building better communities throughout California. Piper Jaffray is honored to support Huell Hauser's program about California communities. Piper Jaffray has been pleased to help finance California city and county redevelopment programs. The ingenuity and entrepreneurship exhibited by California residents when presented with the opportunity to improve their communities reflects a remarkable track record of local involvement and success. Piper Jaffray looks forward to continuing to help California communities muster the resources to make this a great state.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser. It's a beautiful morning in Southern California. Specifically, we're in Pasadena. More specifically than that, we are in Old Pasadena. And I keep wanting to say Old Town Pasadena, but really it's Old Pasadena. Here to give us a tour. Introduce yourself to everybody, Robert.
Huell, my name is Robert Montano, and I work for the city's redevelopment agency.
Okay, now we are standing right in the heart of Old Pasadena. Now, for those people who don't know about Old Pasadena, explain what Old Pasadena is. We'll start off with what Old Pasadena was.
Sure. Old Pasadena was the original downtown hub for the city. When the city was founded in the late 1800s, this was the economic core for the city. There was merchants, businesses, general stores, blacksmiths, you name it. This is where everything occurred. And as the city and time went on, like all great American downtowns, the downtown went into decline. And by the 60s and the early 70s, much of Old Pasadena had become boarded up, kind of derelict buildings, and we're in need of major investment and repair, actually.
I've seen pictures. You've provided us with pictures of what it looked like in the 60s and 70s. It was kind of a mishmash. There were a lot of buildings that, boy, they were showing their age. They weren't really up to speed. It was in decline.
Absolutely. All of these buildings built in the late 1800s were, by the 1950s and 60s, in a serious state of disrepair. Some of them had already fallen. You'll see some photographs in some areas where the buildings, all that were left were kind of just these vertical piers. The windows were out. Some of them were vacant. Some of them were lived in by artists. There were bars everywhere. There were homelesses and squatters in some of the other buildings.
So, in other words, by the 60s and 70s, Old Pasadena had seen better days. It was definitely in decline.
Absolutely.
And the city's redevelopment agency at first was taking the classic approach that was being used by a lot of redevelopment agencies back in the 60s and 70s of just tearing the old stuff down and putting new stuff up.
Absolutely. The idea was out with the old and in with the new, and creating these Pasadena corporate centers and creating these mega blocks where the offices and the businesses were really separate from the street and the activities that were on the street. Employees had no idea what was occurring down on the street level. There was no activity on the street level, and everything was being done on the internal of the buildings.
They built a lot of these big block buildings in the 60s and 70s, and then something very exciting and creative happened.
Absolutely. A number of property owners decided, hey, we've got the most unique district of historic buildings in much of Southern California. Instead of tearing everything down, let's start to reinvest in our buildings, rehabilitate the buildings. And the property owners encouraged the city of Pasadena, and we created a plan for Old Pasadena to really rehabilitate what exists and create this pedestrian, walkable downtown.
So you actually took a lot of these old buildings that were slated for demolition and started getting creative with them, restoring them, renovating them, bringing them back to life, to their former glory.
Exactly. The property owners had a vision. They encouraged the city. We agreed with it. And what you see now is the fruits of all of that labor.
Okay, we're starting our tour and we're leaving Colorado Boulevard and heading into an alley, because alleys are an important part of what's happening in Old Pasadena
They're
as well.
a very big part of Old Pasadena. They're the original service alleys to all of the buildings that would have needed some access from the rear of the facilities.
And you've got plaques up here. For example, this building, which is now a clothing store, started off, according to the plaque, as the first meeting of the Salvation Army in Pasadena was held at this site on February the 2nd, 1888. Who did the research to find all this out?
Pasadena Heritage, who's the local historical society, City of Pasadena, property owners, what is now the Old Pasadena Business District.
Yeah.
There was just a group of people that did all of the research and study of trying to figure out who was here and what was going on.
And now this is named Miller Alley. So you've got all of these alleys, and boy, when you walk down here, they really have, with the old brick and the old facades, you've got this wonderful feeling of walking through history. And this is interesting. You got Johnny Rockets right here in this old building. They're putting the chairs out, getting ready to open up for the day. And then you've got, this is a new building that looks old.
Yes, this is One Colorado. It's one of the original redevelopment projects in Old Pasadena, and it incorporates almost a full city block. This building was completely demolished, or nearly. Much of it was lost. And allegedly, through the accident of a truck hitting one of the piers in the middle of the night, the building fell and couldn't be redeveloped, much to the disappointment of the historical agency society that wanted to redevelop the building
back.
So they built a new one.
And look at this, and it's still early in the morning. People haven't started arriving yet, but you've got this wonderful plaza here.
Yes.
That's open for business, and then you got the backs of all these old buildings over here, and these are the original buildings.
Some of them are new buildings or newer buildings built in the 1980s, but the rest of them are all the 1800s buildings.
Boy, you've done a good job. I can't tell from first look what's old and what's new.
Yeah, exactly. Now that's not the way we really want it. We'd like to see some more differentiation between new and old, because we don't want to replicate things and make it too fake.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they've done a good job blending everything together.
It was fake.
No, I know what you mean. One interesting thing about this, Huel, is this concrete or these granite swales. This is all the original brick that was the original swale.
Right here.
Right here. And what they did was, when they rehabilitated this area, they took out each brick, they numbered its location, rebuilt everything that you see in here, and then put the brick back exactly where it went.
What is a swale?
Well, it's where the water runs through.
Like a drain.
Drain, exactly.
Wow. So this old historic swale runs right through the middle.
Right through the middle, and then right out the other alley, back up to Union Street behind us.
Jake's, Pasadena's best burger since 1947. So you saved a lot of the old stuff. That hamburger stand's been there through good times and bad.
Absolutely. You know, our mission was always to preserve as many historic buildings as possible, and that's kind of the interesting fabric and feel of the area.
It's not just the architecture, it's the feel of the place.
Correct.
All right, we're back on Colorado Boulevard, and it's a nice big 4-lane street these days, and that gets to that first redevelopment back in the 20s, when they literally, now the front of this beautiful building right here doesn't date back to the 1800s. It dates back to
the 1920s.
What did they do?
Colorado used to be 2 lanes, 1 lane in either direction, and the idea was to, if we were going to have this beautiful city, we needed to have a grand boulevard through our downtown. And so many of the 1800s facades were cut off and removed, and these new facades built in the 1920s to accommodate the widening of the street. In some areas, the facade was actually pulled back, the middle of the building having been cut out instead of the front.
But this is from the 20s.
It is.
It still has that old Pasadena look to it, a very historic. Boy, this is a beautiful look.
It is. It's all
right here.
It's the authenticity of it all that I think is so appealing to our visitors.
All right, let's walk on down here, because how big is old Pasadena?
We're about 20 blocks.
So it's a big area.
It's a very
all
big area.
contiguous. It's all joined together.
Old Pasadena, like we like to say, is not just Colorado Boulevard. There are arms and legs to the north and south of Colorado.
Now, this is from the 20s, right?
That facade there is from the 20s.
And then these two down here, this is new.
That's new. That was built just a few years ago, actually.
So is there an architectural standard as to what things need to look like when they're built here?
Well, when new buildings are constructed, we want them to take cues from the historic buildings so as to not look completely out of place.
Yeah.
But then again, to respect the historic fabric that it does exist in the area.
You know, this place is bustling at night and in the afternoons. We're kind of here early in the morning.
Goodness, yeah.
But this is just wall-to-wall people on the weekends and at night.
Yeah, generally it's quite a scene. It's quite a scene during the holidays, weekends, special events. It's quite an event.
Well, it's nice at night, but I kind of like it quiet in the morning.
It makes it a lot
too.
easier, doesn't it?
Boy, this points it up better than any words. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. This wonderful old building from the...
that building there looks like it dates probably from the 20s, if not just a bit before.
And this is very old right here.
This would all be the late 1800s as well.
And then there's one of your newer buildings from the 70s.
Well, that was the idea, was to demolish much of old Pasadena and create those corporate blocks.
Yeah.
And Parsons was one of the first ones in.
So you've got the whole sequence of events here, from very old right here, to the 20s right here, to the 70s in the background.
Exactly,
there.
And then behind us are two projects that were done in the early 2000s.
So you got a whole mixture of time periods.
A lot
here.
of investment, a lot of reinvestment in old Pasadena. That's what's kept it so exciting.
Each one of these buildings in old Pasadena has a personal story, a family story behind it. None any better than yours. We're standing in front of your family's building.
That's right.
Tell us where we are.
We're at 139 West Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena.
Mm-hmm.
And the printing business that's represented by the gold letters was started by my grandfather 100 years ago.
So it's been here on Colorado Boulevard.
Yeah. A couple little places beforehand.
But it's always been here in old Pasadena.
Right. We think he bought the building about 1911. He'd learned as an apprentice back east that the highest per capita income in the country was Pasadena and Orange Grove Boulevard, so he kept moving closer.
And you were here through good times and bad, because at one point this part of town was the primo spot, and then in the 50s, 60s, and 70s it all went downhill.
Iffy. Yeah.
Can you remember those days?
Oh, yes.
What was the neighborhood like back then?
Well, there were some interesting things, but it was a little sketchy. It was a little sketchy. Some stores had gone, and it wasn't the lovely retail entertainment district that it is today.
And what do you think about what they've done with your grandfather's old printing business here?
Well, we moved the printing business out. We're now farther east in Pasadena, merged with Typecraft, which was our backdoor neighbor when this was more manufacturing district.
Now it's retail.
Now it's retail.
But the old building is still here. And look at these windows.
We kept our gold letters, and we kept the woodwork that my other grandfather did to restore that portion of the building.
So it's back better than ever.
Better than ever.
How do you feel about that?
I feel great. I'm enjoying it immensely and love working with old Pasadena folks and just being part of this renaissance.
Is there a plaque anywhere on the building? We need to get you a plaque.
I don't think there is.
Robert?
There's a Typecraft plaque back on Union.
Yeah.
In the back?
In the back.
So in a lot of ways, the back part is even more historic than the front part.
Oh, definitely.
So you got a plaque. You just have to go to the back to read it.
Right.
Redevelopment is still a work in progress here in old Pasadena.
Absolutely. The building behind me, the corner of Colorado and Fair Oaks, the Coal Fair building, wasn't completed until the maybe earlier to mid 1990s.
So what was it, sitting there in its original
was sitting there
old
in its
state?
Absolutely, completely vacant, boarded up. And it was,
that's kind of a critical place for it to be, still boarded up all these years.
Very important corner. It's the dead center of old Pasadena. It's now retail on the ground floor and office and apartments on the upper floors.
Wow, and this building, now this is really a surprise because you sent me some pictures of this building totally burned out.
Completely burnt out, yeah. In the probably early to mid 80s, there was a major fire that gutted the entire building.
So what did you do? Take it back to its original? I mean, this grill work here and all of this?
Much of that stayed
original?
And it all stayed intact through the fire, actually.
Wow.
And so a good paint job and some cleaning up really brought the building back to life.
See, you could easily torn that down.
Easily.
And see, I like this part of Colorado too, because it's kind of a mishmash of little stores, little mom and pop stores.
Exactly. We got the T-Mobile building. It was just painted a couple of months ago. That property owner reinvested in his property. The same thing with the next building over.
All up and down here.
And at the end of this block, the Money to Loan Pawn Shop, which is one of the original businesses in Old Pasadena, is preparing to go through a facade improvement as well.
But it's going to stay a pawn shop.
It will, yeah.
So you're keeping, I mean, some of it's been gentrified. That's happening all over California.
Correct.
But a lot of it is keeping its old kind of a character, mom and pop kind of a feel to it.
That's what makes Old Pasadena a little more authentic than many other areas in Southern California. Makes it more interesting.
Yeah. The old and the new.
The old and the new.
Unsolicited testimonials. I just ran into these fellas walking down the street. You work here in Old Pasadena.
Yes, we do. Right here at the AT&T building.
Now that's a new building.
Compared to these buildings here, yes.
Yeah, it was built in the 70s.
Correct.
What do you think about the old building?
Great. Love the architecture, love the structure. There's no other place like Pasadena when it comes to these. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, see? But out here, you look at the architecture, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful.
A lot of history here.
A lot of history.
We love it the way it is. We don't want to change.
Nothing like it at all.
Well, it's not going to change. It's only going to get better.
I hope so.
You know, some of these old buildings almost got torn down. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Back in the 70s, they were going to tear all this down, maybe.
What a shame that would have been, Hugh.
No way, don't do it. Don't do it.
Hugh, you know, just the other day we were taking our break and on our walk when I noticed the detail in the architecture.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of detail in all these old buildings, the craftsmanship that's on each building, and I brought that to all their attention. I said, look at this. Look at what we get to be a part of every day on our lunch break.
Wow, fellas. So you're appreciating Old Pasadena.
Yes, we are. Yes, sir.
Give us a thumbs up, a collective thumbs up for historic architectural detail. And these fellas know what they're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Robert, you got to sell me on this. I'm not very excited about what I see right here. It just looks like an empty lot with a lot of asphalt and parked cars on it.
Well, what you're looking at is the former Union Pacific Railroad right-of-way. The freight line up until the late 80s would come through on surface, stop traffic on the weekend, crossing gates would come down, and a freight liner would come right through here.
The 1980s?
1980s, absolutely.
Well, what's there now?
Underneath is the Metro Gold Line. That the Delmar station is down there at the red building.
It goes right into downtown LA.
Goes right into downtown Los Angeles. With redevelopment funds, we're going to remove the asphalt and create a large pedestrian plaza that will go from Green Street all the way up to Union, and then the next block up to Memorial Park Station.
So this is going to be a pedestrian plaza right here.
Exactly. Restaurants will be able to open and have seating out here. We could have farmers markets and public events out here. And this becomes a much more dynamic area.
So this is where the old rail lines were. Now the gold line is underneath.
Exactly.
And before long, you're going to have a park and pedestrians and restaurants and grass and fountains and everything else up here.
All that good stuff, exactly.
Wow, so this really is still a work in progress.
Well, and on top of that, the improvement and the money that comes out of this area is reinvested into housing throughout the city. You know, redevelopment creates funds that you can invest elsewhere, and that's a major component of what we like to accomplish is affordable housing throughout the city.
You know, I've been to Old Pasadena a lot of times. You really, in a way, almost take it for granted, but when you really start looking at the fronts of these buildings and the whole sense of place that's here,
there's nothing
really
like
is a jewel, isn't it?
There's nothing like it anywhere. I think there are places that try to be what Old Pasadena is. They use it as a model for their programs and their development scope, but when it comes down to it, there's nothing like the real deal.
Yeah, this is the real thing.
Yeah, exactly.
This isn't made to look like the real thing. This is the real thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, as our tour continues, we have left Old Pasadena, that 20-block area, 20 square blocks, right?
Correct.
Right down
Correct.
Colorado, but
Yep.
we're still, now where are we now? What part of town?
We are now in our Civic Center, and we're standing at Paseo, Colorado.
Okay, now before we get to Paseo, Colorado, there's an old post office
It's
building
an old
over
post
there.
office.
There's the old city hall. Boy, it's a beauty over there in the background. Here's one of the new buildings here, and then right down here, Robert, this looks like kind of lofts, apartments.
Well, these buildings here with the glass atriums are all condominiums, very high-end condominiums. Down there we have an office building.
Wow, so this is the new part of town.
This is, well, it's all built around the same time in the early 20s. City Hall was built in the early 20s. The opposite end, we have the Civic Auditorium.
All right, let's talk about this, because now this is a new part of town that's been new twice, hasn't it?
2 redevelopment projects on the same property.
All right, let's talk about the first redevelopment project, which happened back in...
The early 80s was, we built Plaza Pasadena. And here, you know, Garfield came all the way through as a normal street. We had historic buildings, and this was probably, you know, right when we decided we were thinking of tearing everything down. We tore down a couple of just great buildings.
But it was a covered kind of a...
Well, we built an interior or your you know, conventional regional mall in the middle of our downtown.
That was in the 80s.
That was in the 80s, and there was a big glass atrium here.
But where's the glass atrium today?
Everything was torn down to create Paseo, Colorado, which is this open air mall with apartments on apartment living all above.
Okay, so you got apartment living up here.
Yes.
You got stores down here, and you've opened the whole thing up. So this is the second way of dealing with redevelopment. You did it one way in the 80s. You've come back now and done it another way.
Well, we'd like to think we corrected our error that we had the first time around and created this big Paseo and this big public space. And we've reconnected the visual connection between the Civic Auditorium, the library, City Hall.
Civic Auditorium, and then you got the City Hall,
Absolutely.
and then you've got this new vibrant area here in the middle. So you really have connected the old and the new.
Yes.
In kind of a seamless transition.
Well, that's exactly the same thing. It's all seamless. It's all adjacent. So you can walk from Old Pasadena to Paseo, Colorado, and through the rest of our downtown to the other districts, Playhouse District, South Lake District.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've done it right. It's all right now, isn't it?
Well, we'd like to think so. We've got a few things that we're working on to really take us to the next stage, where we're studying the feasibility of a streetcar that will circulate through our downtown. We're implementing a pedestrian wayfinding program, so you'll know how close everything is.
Wow.
To make it all much more visitor friendly than we've been in the past.
Well, congratulations. You've done it right.
Thank you.
This has got to be a model. Let's just walk a little bit further down here, because the energy's beginning to build. This is another one of these areas that I bet at night and on the weekends, it's just packed over here.
You know, it's great. We do summer swing series. People are dancing here in the public courtyard.
Look, here's more of this. Is this housing or a hotel?
That's all housing.
Oh, wow. What a nice, boy, when you live here, you're living right in the middle of energy going on.
Well, you know, the
down
great
here.
thing is on top, it's apartments. We've got retail. On the ground floor, over on that corner, there's a grocery store, Gelson's.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of activity here, a lot of living amenities that you can take advantage of.
Boy, it's nice looking down here at the old auditorium, but it's nice looking down here. What's that building way off in the distance?
That's our public library, well, one of our public libraries. That's our main public library.
So you've really connected it all.
Yeah, it was part of a formal plan that everything was created on an axis. And we've returned that access.
I've been coming to Pasadena for years. I knew about old Pasadena, but I didn't really know about old Pasadena, and I certainly didn't know the history behind this. Boy, this is all wonderful. Thank you for the tour.
Thank you.
I'll be back, and I think a lot of our viewers will be here to see this for themselves, because it really does make an impression. This is a livable city. It has a good feel. It's a welcoming kind of a feel here.
That's really what we want to create, is a walkable, livable city where people can live, they can work, they can play. Everything can occur in one place in many different forms.
Well, we haven't seen the whole city, but we've seen a good chunk of it. We've had a wonderful day here. Pasadena, one of the best examples of one of California's communities. They have done it right here in Pasadena. Well, there's no doubt about it. They have done it right in Old Pasadena, a place that's well worth a visit. And if you'd like to go on this particular adventure again or share it with family or friends, of course it's available on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727 and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.
California's Communities is supported by the California Redevelopment Association Foundation, a statewide organization made up of cities, counties, nonprofits, and private businesses sharing a common goal of bringing renewed life to neighborhoods and downtowns by expanding local businesses, creating jobs, building affordable housing, restoring buildings, and improving public facilities and infrastructure. Redevelopment, building better communities throughout California. Piper Jaffray is honored to support Huell Hauser's program about California communities. Piper Jaffray has been pleased to help finance California city and county redevelopment programs. The ingenuity and entrepreneurship exhibited by California residents when presented with the opportunity to improve their communities reflects a remarkable track record of local involvement and success. Piper Jaffray looks forward to continuing to help California communities muster the resources to make this a great state.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Huell Hauser, and for those of you who want to share our California adventures with family and friends who live out of state, well, you can send them to our website at www.calgold.com, where they'll find a link to iTunes and an ever-increasing number of episodes they can watch for free. We're taking California's gold worldwide on the web.